You vary from these instructions and I'm gonna kill you, understand? All right.
The story will focus on an old man named Robert McCall, who lives all alone. He resides in an apartment on the outskirts of the city, working as an employee in the carpentry section of a home improvement store. He does all of this just to live out the rest of his old age. His name is Ralphie, one of the store employees who will soon take a test to become a security guard. However, because of his excess weight, Ralphie asks for Robert's help to become his mentor in a diet program so that when he registers later, Ralphie can meet the classification requirements. When he gets home, we will see a discipline and neatness that Robert shows when he does his housework very neatly, cleanly, thoroughly, on time, arranged symmetrically, and always placing items in the same place. However, behind his calmness, there is something that seems to always haunt Robert's mind. That is what makes him often unable to sleep early, which finally makes Robert go out to drink tea at his favorite cafe. That is where we will be introduced to a young girl named Terry who is, someone who works as a lady of the night who usually waits for her customers in this place. That is what makes Robert and Terry already know each other, but not too closely, only exchanging greetings and discussing the contents of the books Robert usually reads.
Right now.
As is his habit, Robert always brings his own tea bag from home, so technically Robert comes to this cafe only to buy hot water and rent a glass and a chair, and that is quite a saving. The next morning, we will again be shown the normal life Robert lives, which at a glance seems common and reasonable like most people. However, his profession in the past certainly becomes a mystery and a curiosity for us all, not excluding two young men working in this store who ask about what Robert's job was before this place. Because he doesn't want the hassle of answering, Robert claims to be a former musician who was once a member of a band. Long story short, the night arrives exactly at 2 a.m. at the same cafe. Robert again sees Terry, who just crawled out of her habitat to look for a mouthful of rice under the bright moonlight. Robert briefly chats with Terry, still discussing the contents of the book Robert reads, which is about a fisherman catching fish in the sea. From several meetings and conversations, Robert clearly can already see and guess if Terry is very forced to do a job like this. Their chat suddenly stops when someone named Slavi calls her, forcing her to come out immediately to go with a customer whom she refused yesterday because he plays rough. Terry has no other choice when Slavi firmly threatens to fire her from her job. In the next morning, regarding Robert's activities besides working at the store, namely training Ralphie in his diet program so he can lower his weight to take the security test. Exactly at 2 a.m. at the same cafe, Robert sees Terry's face looking like there are bruises and as if she just received violence. However much Robert cares about Terry, Robert has no right to interfere in her business. Right when the cafe is about to close and the only customers are the two of them, Terry, who needs someone to talk to, dares herself to sit at his table. Robert introduces himself to Terry, who introduces her stage name, Alina. Terry tells about her hidden dream of wanting to become a musician or singer, and has even done a recording which she stores on a disc, given to Robert just as a friendship gift. Their chat continues until the street heading home, where when about to say goodbye, suddenly a car appears which turns out to be a man named Slavi, who called Terry last night. Because Terry kept hanging up his calls earlier, Slavi heartlessly slaps Terry's face quite hard. That briefly makes Robert about to act, but again, because he has no right to interfere in other people's business, Robert is forced to choose to stay silent, and instead is given Slavi's business card in case Robert needs entertainment, alias a woman who can entertain him. The next night, still at the same cafe for hours, Robert drinks tea, but oddly, Terry doesn't appear like usual. And how shocked Robert is when he just receives news from the shopkeeper that Terry is reportedly being treated in the ICU due to the violence she experienced.
Someone beat her up real good.
How painful Robert's heart is. and all of ours when seeing Terry's condition. Regardless of her job, Terry is just a young girl looking for food to survive. Now she can only lie in a hospital bed with the condition of her face and body truly battered all over. Even when Terry sheds tears, that makes Robert's blood boil even more and curse the actions done by the perpetrator. Her name is Mandy, Terry's close friend from the same profession. Robert, curious about the perpetrator's background, starts finding out information regarding the scope of their profession. After hearing the confession from Mandy, who says that Slavi often treats his girls inhumanely, that is where Robert's anger rages even more. But again, he has no right to interfere in something that is not his business. Since that night, Robert often daydreams thinking about the suffering experienced by Terry and fellow friends of her profession. Who will help them? Is there anyone who will care about what they experience? Who will stop tyranny like that? Who knows? Robert instantly remembers the words from a companion, namely Ali bin Abi Talib. That is, tyranny will continue to exist not because of the many bad people, but because of the silence of good people. One night at a French restaurant, Slavi is seen just arriving in his sports car, going straight upstairs to his private office, alias the main headquarters of the Russian mafia branch in the United States. Not long after he greets his subordinates and sits on his throne, someone appears whose arrival is very unexpected. Robert, an old man, an ordinary store employee, so bravely enters a room filled with dangerous humans who are cruel and immoral. With such relaxation, he returns Slavi's business card, simultaneously offering a sum of money to buy the freedom of one of his wares, namely Alina, alias Terry.
I can give you $9,800.
A surprising offer from a stranger like this surely makes Slavi and his subordinates very confused. How can there be someone whose origin is unknown suddenly barge into a very private room, bargaining with a mafia boss without fear or at least nervousness? Robert, politely, softly and full of manners, faces the less than good response from all of them who even laugh at him. Him who basically has good intentions, wanting to raise the dignity of a woman from an environment like this. Briefly appreciating Robert's guts by offering a handshake, Slavi, feeling himself a powerful person, immediately shows his fangs by issuing intimidating words, a sort of threat and terror sentence intending to make Robert scared. Which in the end, Robert's offer is rejected outright, with laughter from all of them, who mock his intentions and kick him out of that room. And what Robert will do next will truly be very surprising, because he chooses to lock the door and trap them all with him. There, Robert performs a sort of hypothesis, prediction, or accurate calculation to guess the result of an action exactly like what Sherlock Holmes usually does. An ability like this clearly can only be done by someone who already possesses a lot of experience, because Robert isn't just randomly guessing, but can also estimate how long it takes to incapacitate the enemies he will face.
16 seconds.
And yes, Robert only needs around 28 seconds to incapacitate 5 men who are mostly young, fit, strong, powerful, and armed. Slavi is truly made to regret as well as wonder about the figure of Robert, who suddenly comes destroying his kingdom in a short time. If only Slavi accepted the money Robert offered earlier, maybe his fate wouldn't be like this. The next day, Slavi and his subordinates immediately enter the criminal news with a temporary suspicion of it happening due to a war between gangs and mafia groups. So it is clear that Robert does not need to worry about being involved in that case, especially who would believe if a Russian mafia group famous for being dangerous was slaughtered by just an ordinary old man like this Robert. Different from the thinking of the general public, there is one Russian man sent specifically to investigate this case. His name is Teddy, a direct envoy from the big mafia boss named Pushkin, alias Slavi's master. While everyone just believes that this case is based on a power war between gangs, Teddy thinks the opposite, conducting analysis and investigation directly at the crime scene, and succeeds in concluding if this brutal slaughter was only done by one person alone, a person who is very professional in killing. Teddy immediately meets several police officers, one of whom is named, let's just call him Samson. This is the guy. Teddy's arrival truly intimidates them all, so mentally struck is Samson, who initially wanted to act arrogant as a local. He is immediately made silent when Teddy starts describing his important role in this case.
Ready for business?
Almost exactly the same as Robert, Teddy is a typical man who is well coordinated and highly values time. That is proven when he, accompanied by Samson, goes to the headquarters of an Irish mafia boss intending to find out if the Irish side was involved in the case of Slavi's death. How terrified Samson is when accompanying someone like this Teddy, who besides having speech that seems intimidating, his attitude and behavior are no less intimidating, even leaning more towards brutal. That is proven when Teddy so easily smashes someone's head, using an ashtray just to confirm his personal opinion. Up to here, it is clear that Teddy, maybe is a figure Robert should watch out for, because besides having access and being fully facilitated by his big boss, Teddy is an ambitious figure who does not easily give up. Even for the class of an officer like Samson, he is unable to stem his brutality. In the middle of his conversation with the big boss via telephone, Teddy observes one by one the photos captured by the CCTV camera outside the restaurant, where Teddy reports regarding the results of his investigation, which essentially, Teddy is very sure 100% if Slavi and his subordinates were not killed by a random person, but by someone very professional. Even from the scars he examined himself earlier, he admits for the first time seeing a killing ability as extraordinary as that. For a moment, we leave this heavy business and switch to Robert's business, who just received news if Ralphie just resigned from his job. Curious about what the cause is, Robert immediately rushes to Ralphie's mother's shop, which is in a condition after being burned. Finally, Ralphie is honest that the reason he resigned and cancelled taking the security test is to be able to focus more on helping his mother's shop business.
So I'm gonna help out around here now.
Muchas gracias, mucho gusto. No.
Investigating further, his mother's shop fire was not merely an ordinary accident, but there are two police officers who usually collect or extort monthly dues from small traders. Because for these 2 months Ralphie's mother indeed didn't give the deposit, maybe they were annoyed and burned his mother's shop to teach a lesson.
Thinking I wasn't gonna pass the security guard test anyway.
And true enough, on that very night, 2 police officers appear coming to collect money from Ralphie's mother. So it is clear if all of that is the doing of these 2 bastards, without the 2 of them realizing there is the figure of Robert, who secretly has recorded their rotten behavior. So when Robert beats both of them up and threatens to spread the video, these 2 police officers are immediately terrified and return all the money belonging to the traders. As a result, several days later, Ralphie is seen already wearing a security uniform, which means Robert's help given all this time succeeded in making other people happy. And according to the title and his nickname, namely the Equalizer, Robert is a balancing figure whose duty is to be a mediator between truth and falsehood. That is shown again when the store cashier is being threatened by an armed criminal. Robert, realizing that, calmly gives all the money inside the cash register. But when the criminal forces the cashier to take off the ring, inherited from her late mother, that is where Robert feels the need to act by again performing a hypothesis prediction. But because the situation and conditions are not conducive, Robert chooses to postpone his action by letting the criminal go just like that, with his car license plate number successfully obtained. It is not told how Robert finishes off the criminal, but the next morning he is seen placing the hammer he took yesterday with bloodstains, which of course, that is blood. And the blood belongs to the criminal yesterday. Can't imagine how brutally Robert taught the criminal a lesson, but what is certain is the cashier can smile again after her mother's inheritance ring is already returned, stored inside the cash register. Finished with the minion business, okay? This is the time we return to Teddy's business, who has met everyone connected to Slavi, where Teddy's investigation finally ends at one of Slavi's wares, who is none other than Mandy, Terry's friend whom Robert met at the hospital. As a result, the investigation of this case narrows down, so Teddy interrogates Mandy more persuasively. When Teddy has succeeded in getting the characteristics of the man he is looking for, which in this case is Robert, Teddy, who is basically a cold-blooded killer, heartlessly chokes Mandy from behind until she dies due to running out of breath. From the latest CCTV camera photo results and the characteristics Mandy mentioned earlier, Teddy finally succeeds in getting one step closer to Robert. With the help of the police officers in this city, Teddy succeeds in getting the address of Robert's residence and immediately rushes there to meet him directly. And this is the moment most waited for, the first meeting between two figures who are equally smart and brutal, where an interesting conversation occurs, which essentially the two of them argue with each other, with Teddy claiming to be a police officer and Robert claiming to be a general store employee, even though both have the same instinct, equally able to see the gaze of a professional, but choose to postpone action to look for the right time. And how smart these two characters are. When Robert immediately goes to the pharmacy to buy motion sickness medicine, who knows for what purpose? Meanwhile, Teddy in his office is already absolutely 100% sure if Robert is the perpetrator of the Slavi massacre. Teddy deliberately doesn't rush to take action because he wants to find out first who or what Robert's origin is, working for whom, where, and how Robert can have killing abilities like that. Teddy seems to start feeling challenged, feeling rivaled, there is resistance, and ambitious to be able to know who Robert really is.
All lies. Yes, I want to know who he's working for.
Long story short, at the same cafe, Robert is seen sitting while reading a book right when an electricity officer with a tall big body just enters. With his sharp instinct, Robert can immediately guess if a PLN officer's hands cannot possibly be that clean, so he quickly performs a hypothesis prediction to incapacitate this henchman of Teddy. And yes, Robert calmly walks out of the cafe while taking a photo of Teddy, who is still inside the car. At this point, Teddy is truly as if challenged directly, as if invited to play a game of who is smarter and faster, so Teddy is truly made even more curious about who this Robert figure is. Failing to catch Robert outside, Teddy and his subordinates immediately rush to his residence. Upon arriving there, Robert's apartment is already empty and only leaves a bottle of air motion sickness medicine, intending to make them believe if Robert has already run far out of town. Whereas without them all realizing, Robert has already rented a new apartment right across from his old apartment and is observing the movements of Teddy and his subordinates through a small camera hidden in several spots.
Mexico 2 days ago.
He's watching us.
Realizing if Teddy is a typical person who will never stop, Robert immediately goes to meet close friends who are a married couple, namely Susan and Brian. The two of them are people working in government agencies, so little by little it is finally revealed if Robert formerly might be a person who also worked for the government. It is not explained specifically his profession or specialization. What is clear is Robert has retired from his old job and is trying to live normally like other people. Without much small talk, Robert immediately reveals his purpose coming here is to ask for help from Susan and Brian to find information about this Teddy. Not needing to wait long, Susan succeeds in creating a complete file about this Teddy's mafia group. Even the face of Pushkin, the big mafia boss, is in that file, including the face of Samson, who is known to be the officer closest to them all.
He kills you and anyone you care about.
In the end, Robert once again is forced to become someone he actually doesn't hope to be. Essentially, Robert wants to truly finish this problem until it's complete, truly complete down to its roots. And if you think Robert does all this only for the sake of material things for someone, you are wrong. Because this isn't about material things alone, but about people who are always tyrannized, the community that is always oppressed, the community that is always deceived by high-ranking people, already poor made poorer, already suffering made to suffer more. Robert realizes one thing, that some of us do not have the capacity and strength to fight back. So the figure of Robert appears as a balancer, alias the Equalizer, who possesses the capacity and ability to defeat tyranny that is already excessive. After all the data is in hand, Robert immediately shocks his first target, the weakest one first, namely Samson, to invite him to cooperate, although with a way that is a little bit forceful.
Pushkin.
Luckily, Samsel basically is already tired of working for Teddy, so he acts cooperatively by wanting to take Robert to one of the money storage places belonging to Pushkin, the big boss. Arriving at the location, Robert is immediately met with a man named Andre, who, according to Samsel, this Andre is the person appointed as the most powerful in this place. So without much small talk anymore, Robert immediately snatches his pistol to make all his subordinates kneel. After successfully taming Andre and his subordinates, Robert gives severance pay to all employees working in that place and tells them all to find other jobs that are more lawful. Meanwhile, for Sesame Samson, Robert tries to make him realize the meaning of his rank as a police officer, until finally, Samsel succeeds in defeating his own ego by intending to admit all his mistakes, while simultaneously giving a storage box containing all evidence of crimes committed by the mafia group. After Robert succeeds in getting all the evidence and Samson surrenders himself to the institution where he works, the police party will truly be very shocked when examining the crime scene. Not because of Andre and his subordinates who are tied up freezing in the cooling room, but the pile of money belonging to Pushkin in a very extraordinarily large amount. The result of the illicit business he has been doing all this time. Teddy himself is seen eating at a restaurant together with a leader from a mercenary group, where the plan is Teddy will ask for help from these mercenaries to hunt down Robert. However, before the plan is realized, the leader who asked permission to go to the toilet in fact never returns because Robert has already finished him off first. For the umpteenth time, Teddy is truly mentally struck, but tries not to show his weakness by remaining arrogant and conceited, as if still one step ahead compared to Robert. Still, with this same treatment as he did to Slavi, Robert comes to meet Teddy to give a peace offer in a good and polite way, where Robert gives Teddy time to think and a phone number if he already gets the answer. With several digital evidence items given by Samsel, Robert sends all that evidence via email to the FBI, where Robert accidentally finds one property belonging to Pushkin in the form of a ship containing oil tanks. To maximize and totalize his good intentions, Robert intentionally blows up that oil tank ship to make Pushkin and Teddy even more heated up. As a result, Pushkin, the big boss, furiously scolds Teddy due to the crazy losses he experienced during these last few days, where Teddy himself seems not to care anymore about his big boss's words and only focuses on wanting to catch and find out who Robert really is, which of course, now he is already with the mercenaries who are now working for him. Teddy uses a cunning and ungentle way, which is assigning 2 of his mercenaries to hold several of Robert's work friends hostage at the store, including Ralphie, while he himself and the rest of the team will wait at the oil tank location to welcome Robert's arrival, who is forced to surrender himself. Instead of finishing off Robert from afar by tracking his phone number, Teddy actually has to be fooled for the umpteenth time when Robert places his phone just like that. So Teddy, who is annoyed, immediately contacts his 2 mercenaries who are at the store to kill one of the hostages. Music suddenly turns on by itself, and its loud sound is quite disturbing to the activities of these mercenaries. So Ralphie is asked to wake up and show where that music room is coming from. Arriving at the intended room, one mercenary is immediately incapacitated easily by Robert. Then he contacts one more mercenary to come out by using Ralphie as bait. And after both mercenaries are already incapacitated, now it is time for Ralphie's task to make his friends get out of this store. However, that plan coincides with the appearance of Teddy and all his mercenaries, so Ralphie must do it quickly. From the aspect of numbers and weaponry, maybe Robert loses, but from the aspect of tactics and intelligence, Robert is far more experienced. That is shown from how Robert turns off all lighting inside this store and starts finishing off Teddy's subordinates one by one in different places, using various types of tools that we often encounter daily. After successfully finishing off almost half of Teddy's troops, Robert has to face one mercenary who has a fierce demeanor and is not easily taken down, so Robert is a little bit overwhelmed and has to put in more effort to be able to defeat this one. Remaining are Teddy and one more soldier. Robert, who is still lying down, is helped by Ralphie, who turns out didn't run away with the others and chose to stay here helping Robert. Since that is indeed what he wants, Ralphie is given a task to go to the panel room and pull the electricity lever. Teddy's last subordinate finally falls after Robert blows him up, using this gas canister put inside a microwave, where now only Teddy remains alone, who coincidentally just right catches Ralphie in the panel room, when Ralphie is truly trapped and about to be killed by Teddy. Suddenly using a nail gun, one by one Teddy's hands and feet are incapacitated until he is helpless, where Teddy truly feels very much pain, not because of the nails but more on his defeat. Outsmarted, outpaced, out-tacticked, outmaneuvered, lost everything. However, what is more painful than all of that is until the last seconds of his life, Teddy is still curious and still doesn't know who the figure of Robert really is. Because all of this is not finished yet. Do you remember Robert's words who wanted to finish everything down to its roots? Yes, Robert goes to Moscow, Russia, more precisely the residence of Pushkin, the big boss guarded by dozens of guards. If a ruler like Pushkin feels himself immune to law, untouchable, and difficult to reach by anyone, that is totally wrong. Because the fact is, Robert is seen already inside Pushkin's house exactly when he just finished bathing. Realizing if Robert came here to kill him, Pushkin, who still feels if money can buy everything, tries to negotiate with Robert about approximately how much nominal Robert wants. Just name it. Pushkin's answer truly disappoints Robert very much, because initially Robert intended to give a chance for Pushkin to repent, but the fact is, he instead wanted to try to bribe him. So don't blame anyone if Pushkin has to die in a way that is not elegant, which is dying electrocuted in his own bathroom. In the end, Robert succeeds in completing what he had planned. Terry is now recovered and clean from the night world, even planning to start diving into the music world, as well as with Ralphie and other store employees who return to continuing their normal lives. So up to here, we can see the big impact of the actions taken by Robert, which regardless of his brutal and heartless ways, at least Robert finishes off evil people who indeed deserve to be removed. Until the last second, Robert still doesn't want to reveal who his true identity is. However, because there are already a second and third movie, surely some of you friends already know who the figure of Robert really is. I won't say it here. Yeah, please discuss with each other in the comments. Now, reflecting on the figures of Slavi, Teddy and Pushkin, they are all equally tyrannical humans who were given a chance to repent but didn't take it. The Equalizer basically teaches us that your past mistakes don't have to define who you are today. What really matters is how you use your skills to protect people who can't protect themselves. Robert McCall proves that true power isn't about muscles or carrying the biggest gun, but about extreme discipline and keeping your cool when everyone else is panicking. It's a solid reminder that while violence should always be the last resort, if you see injustice happening and have the ability to stop it, you have a moral obligation to step up and finish the fight for those who are voiceless. I am Jack, representing the Board of Directors on duty. Thank you and see you in the next video. Adios.